All right, super. Thanks. Thanks for participating. I'm quite surprised that actually we have around 20 plus participants. And what I wanted to talk about is the shared experience from the past and how it applies today regarding moratoria. So we all know that we are in, let's say, a situation where lockdown has impacted our clients. And it's the tool of the tool of the choice today seems to be for banking moratoriums, right? So giving, let's say, payment deferrals and to the clients, and we expect this to be a magic tool. So from this perspective, I just want to share what, the similarities, although today the situation is different, right? So at post 2008, there was a shock. There were some countries that were hit harder than others because of FX. Yet in most of the countries that were hit hard, moratorium was one of the, let's say, tools of choice, to postpone the problems. Let's say it wasn't to solve it, but it was to postpone the problem. And so let me go into some assumptions here, so that we know we're on the same page of what I want to talk about today. There is one of the ideas that I had from my colleagues is to talk about how efficiently can you process let's say restructuring requests or these moratorium requests. For me, this is like a past due item, because I feel that everybody, like all of you, had to deal with it already. Like you had to process it. In the Czech Republic, you will see some stats. It's already falling out, so most of the cases have been already processed. So we'll not even talk about that anymore. What I will be talking about, on the other hand, is that what can you expect from those who actually ask for moratorium? So there are some assumptions there, and I want to share the experience from post 2008. And for those, because there are a lot of my, let's say, friends and colleagues that I've seen registering. So for those who actually worked with them since that time, I think this will be just a breeze and, something that it will be just a refresh of whatever we were doing at the time. So first of all, for those who are not familiar with the moratoriums or deferrals and the technicalities of it, I just wanted to recap real quick the mechanics, the basics, and everything. First of all, deferral is not that it's not a settlement. It's not like forgiveness or anything. And I believe, or I feel that generally it has been feared that the public will just take moratoriums and run with it. And I think it's not a smart idea. Actually, that moratorium is actually a dangerous tool. And the reasons I will actually talk about a little bit later. So by other words, if you look at the slide right now, you have, let's say, two options. There are many others that we can think of, but let's run with these two simple ones. If you take a 6 months deferral after 2 years payment, it takes principal and interest, and it has to put it somewhere, right? It has to be repaid. And regardless of the mechanics, whether it's a bullet payment at the end, which is on the right side, or whether it's 12 equal monthly installments without any interest on top of it, so it's not capitalized, very simple idea, then you still see that at some point in time, the client is faced with a lot of, let's say, troubles. If today they can't repay 500. I don't know if we can expect them, in 6 months to repay 750, if it's going to be in this way. The same way, if they are like okay paying 500, I don't know how likely they are to just pull out 3,000 out of their wallet and just hand it over if 500 is what they are not struggling with, but within their budget, let's put it this way. Yeah? So from this perspective, the problem here is that moratorium is a deferral of a problem rather than a solution. And when we look back at the moratorium cases, then I took stats from the lower hit countries, which is mostly like Czech, Slovak, partially Poland, and the hard hit countries with FX problems, which was Ukraine, which was Hungary, and also I've seen pretty hard hit Romania. I've seen partially Croatia, Serbia, yeah? and Slovenia, of course. So from these perspectives, when we were working with the banks there, and we worked, in like after 2012, when everything was already said and done, we looked at these voluntary moratorium cases, and what was the real deal, or what was safe, what was not safe, right? What did or didn't moratoria save? And moratoria didn't save almost anything. So we've seen basically that the funny part was that once the moratorium was over, usually what happened in 2010, 2011, that there must have been another moratorium so that there was no massive like defaults, complete defaults. So it was moratorium on moratorium, and I believe this was one of the reasons why forbearance became so, let's say, strict and so on. Yeah. But in any case, the idea here is that on average, we've seen like 30% go straight to default. So once moratorium is over, like 30% clients just don't make it immediately. Then usually others, you can see that the others need some help, and you try to help all of them, yeah, those 30 and 40%. But those 30% just don't make it, and those 40% are catching on. But in any case, within a couple of months to 12 months, we see like 70, 75% of those go default anyway. And those who are healed, some 15, 20% of those within 12 months from end of the moratorium also have some trouble or had some trouble at that time. Yeah? So want to keep it correct. And so from this perspective, I don't see the difference, right? The difference is only in the number of cases that come into the moratorium. It used to be in the hard hit countries in 2008. It was huge, right? Right now, I think it's not so big anymore, which is actually a good thing. One of the most of the games that we need to play is looking at it from a bank perspective, right? So when we are looking at what the EBA has to say about loan loss provisions, or let's say how to deal with these moratorias, they are saying in the same sentence almost that you shouldn't reclassify, but you should stay prudent, right? And which is nice. And I would even say that given the clients, let's say given the client's profile, you can expect that such clients will default in the future, because by other words, good or solvent people don't take moratorias. So this is usually the basics of of um, of moratoriums. Now we would like to ask you, those who actually manage some portfolios and stuff, if you you will see a poll on your screen. What kind of defaults would you expect, respectively, in your portfolios or in the portfolios of your country? I'll give you a couple of seconds, let's say 15, another 15 seconds, so that you can look at it. It's the question is simple. What is the percentage of clients you expect to default from the moratorium cases? Like if I don't know, 5% of your portfolio ask for moratorium, out of those 5%, how many do you expect in default 12 months after the moratorium ends? Yeah, that's the question. Perfect. Now I give it another 6 seconds. We have a minute to do it, and we can end the poll. Share the results. So at this moment, what we see is that most of you think that 10 to 20% will default out of those, and we have some cases where we see 61 to 70. This is interesting. From my perspective, I don't have any prescription or wisdom in that regard. I have only the experience from those times. And some say that the economy will actually bump up quite quickly. Nonetheless, the life is not so easy. And this is what I will be talking about a bit later, because I will try to share what kind of situations the clients were in, and we found them during those years. So from here, thank you for sharing your thoughts. We'll also share these results when we send you after this, the summaries and things of that nature. So you will see these in your emails or downloads. So EBA is saying, or gives you the benefit, or gives us the benefit of the doubt, saying, okay, if it's legislative or non-legislative, that it's widely accepted, etc., do not reclassify. However, I think that those who actually ask for moratorium mean they are in trouble, therefore it should be a trigger, right? But the good thing is that this gives us a blank check for a couple of months, depending on the country, to deal with those cases. We did a little research on the different situation in different countries. Based on the public information, either from the banking association or from the governmental sites, we see that most of the countries, except for Poland, which still has to enact some kind of help, most of the countries have governmental and national bank support in this moratorias. So usually government enacted a law. This law has basic rules of how to deal with deferrals, how long they could be, whether it's 3 to 6 months. I think in Hungary it's until the year of 2021 or something like that, or even 12 months. So these things are here. And in some countries, the banking associations or the national banks actually share the numbers of how many cases have actually requested this moratorium. Usually the nitty-gritty comes like how do you capitalize, whether you capitalize the deferred payments, and how are you going to deal with them in terms of are you going to prolong, are you going to create a separate account and then charge it later, or like these kind of things are first of all sometimes regulated, and second of all then are kind of constrained by core systems. Just to give you I want to go back to what I said, earlier, that solvent people usually don't take this moratorium. The reasons I think are simple. If you really think about it, and what it really means is that in the long run, you're going to pay more. And if you look at the distribution, this is actually from the Czech Republic. Right now, there is about 300,000 applications done. It's a stat that has been, I think, 1 or 2 weeks old. So there might be much more. There will be a little bit more of these. And but if you look at the distribution, you can see the cash loan is predominant, and then the mortgages. And when we look at the mortgages, there's the high LTVs, near to 100% with lower repayments. And then if you look at cash loans, then this is I think clear, considered more risky than anything else. So if you look at it, there's this is a clear message that people just don't go for moratoriums out of a whim. If they have money, they pay. So what do we do with all of this? So why is it so tricky to deal with this? It's in some situations, you can think, okay, you have a client. The client has troubles repaying, so we did postpone the payments. In some magical world, we wouldn't charge them anything, and they would just, like, in 6 months, they just jump up on the wagon and chug along as nothing ever happened. But the world is not so simple, unfortunately. And this is actually a results of a pilot we did in 2012, when we went and started digging in the reasons why clients don't pay. And the outcome was surprising, or maybe not so, for those who work in collection for a long period of time. At the time, for me, it was surprising that people don't have just one problem. If they have a problem, usually the problem accumulates. So we found people who had several executions, usually that are not bank related, traffic tickets, parking violations, tax violations, all those kind of things. And the problem was that you can't just simplify that issue. You don't have, like, as a bank, you don't have the golden standard or rule that can all of a sudden mitigate all of those problems of those clients, and they can start jump up and pay again. Unfortunately, if the world, the clients are living in a world where they have to pay other bills, and if we defer this bill to them, there are others that don't defer it, and that's where they get in trouble. When you look at this breakdown, the thing is that there is pretty big. If you look at 6% of all of the cases, it's left top corner, is actually process issues of the bank, which was interesting to me. That when people wait for restructuring, they actually get into collections because they're waiting for the repayment, and sometimes the bank was not fast enough. and they got into collections. So 6% is not a low number. And then if you look at the lower income and family problems, so lower income here we broke down, and I have the numbers there. The income change. This used to be that they had basically a severed income. So the income was imputed, although the work was the same. Workplace change. This was some kind of temporary unemployment, if you will, when this person already had a future job. This is not like between jobs, kind of thing. It was really somebody that was unemployed. Yeah. But workplace change was when we saw and actually confirmed that the person actually had something, in the future, in a couple of months. Work time change. This is actually happening today. A lot more is that people go to part-timers, they get lower income, and I would expect this to be a bigger problem today. Delayed income at the time was big, paying late, paying later, and in lower brackets. What was surprising to me was also that the pregnancy, but kind of makes sense if there are two people in the household or more, and one of the major incomes go out, then the issues are there for sure. And the problem here is that right now we see a neat categorization of the different problems. So, for example, family problems, majority is divorce, out of the 18% there, and we see this as like neatly distributed. But usually the problem is that there is like pregnancy is one thing, but then you don't have the fact that they have other bills that they owe. So this is the main issue. Life is not so simple. Now, when we talk about that life is not simple, and the clients actually accumulate the different issues over time, then the toolkit becomes also quite messy, right? So it's not so easy then to tell anybody that, okay, I'm going to restructure you and that's going to be it, or you're just going to pay me if they don't have money. The thing is that this is actually after several weeks of pilot, when we did credit counseling in one of the countries, this was the final distribution of solutions, final solutions. That means successful solutions, not the one that the client accepted, let's say restructuring, but actually restructured and paid first 3 installments. And we took that as a, let's say, success, close the case, and move forward. And as you can see that, yes, most of the cases require restructuring, right? Lower installment, increased tenor, and so on and so forth. One of the more interesting thing is that how much, let's say, the ability, we call it repayment loan or repay loan, was necessary. The thing is that usually systems cannot handle restructuring of past due cases. And hence we had to come up with how to repay the loan in core system so that we can create the new one, linked one. And it's a completely technical issue, but you have to sign the contract with the client. You have to tell them that it's happening, and so on and so forth. So it's not so simple when you have execution here, and then you have a mortgage with the bank, and the execution prevents you from paying the mortgage. Then you can take as a bank, you can take the, let's say, risk, repay that traffic ticket, and consolidate it under the mortgage, and move forward, right? But these are rare cases. Most of the time, what happens is that the client needs lower installment forever. And Moratorium is not actually providing this, right? So they get no installment and then usually either the same or higher installment. This is usually the killer. So now I want to do another poll before we go into some of the details. I want to ask you, for those who have already are in collections or managing collections or doing collections, which tools or treatments do you already have in your tool set and actively using? It's a multiple choice, so you can probably choose more than one. Oh. And you know, let's share it. I think for this we're gonna need like a minute and a half. I'll let you work on it, and in the meanwhile, we'll then share the outcomes. So I think, 10 more seconds. I think we are all done. I don't see any more clicks coming in. So let's close it and maybe show it. Perfect. So glad to see restructuring there, because it's like I think if we speak only about restructuring, then we have another workshop for a whole day, which it's an interesting tool, but you can cover anything from consolidation to simple tenure extension in there. Voluntary asset sale, glad to see it there. Any asset sale, this is basically very similar. Voluntary asset sale is when you usually sell the mortgage. Any asset sale is when you want to amortize the loan with, I don't know, a car. Yeah. So this is an interesting way to do this as well, but it's not very popular. Restart loan. For me, this is a surprising thing. Restart loan is like it's a workhorse. Like you can utilize it for almost anything. I really recommend that. And settlements. The thing is that all of these are need to work mostly in concert. So in the next slides, I will actually share my top list of either treatments, or we can call it even communication channels in some cases. Yeah, for example, credit counseling is on top of my list. It has been tested even with field visits. That means the guys who did the credit counseling were physically going to the debtors, talking to them, analyzing their situation, etc. But also over the phone. Yeah, both of the cases have been proven to work. And what it is, it's simply personal assignment of cases and giving the wide variety of choices to the counselor to solve the issue of the client. By other words, when, for example, if you have moratorium, you need to be set up for efficiency, right? You have two choices, client chooses one, you process it, end of the story, right? You can't spend too much money on processing those cases and analyzing them. However, credit counseling is set up for effectiveness. That means you want the person processed once and you don't want to see him again in that process. And that means creating long-term solutions. So it's slower, it's more complex, but it yields very good results. I'm going to share with you actually towards the end of the webinar. Field visits. I know in some countries it's a no-no. Never know why, actually, because it's very expensive, I understand, but it's very effective. If you combine it with the counseling, it's not just knocking on doors and trying to, intimidate people, but it's actually a help. I've seen it working very well. Collection agencies, for me, this is, if there are people from collection agencies, they're not going to hear it, they're not going to hear this happily. But for me, if it doesn't make sense to collect it, if it doesn't make economical sense to collect it in the bank, just outsource it. So if the amounts are very low, or if the probabilities in the late collections are very low, don't waste your money on it. Let somebody else collect it. So from this perspective, DCAs, collection agencies are a very good tool. If you can't find people, perfect tool to use. Then everybody said restructuring. This is great. I don't think I need to talk about it in length. The thing is that you have very many restructuring schemas, and I'll be very honest with you. The only I've seen working well is when after the restructuring has lower installment than before, and everything else is I think a flip of a coin, or actually worse. In the settlement for me, there is it's a combination tool. Settlement can be used like pre-legal, like usually what I do is create yourself a the costs that it will take for legal proceeding to go through, and just offer something to the client that that's even better than the legal, and you're actually gaining money for a certain proportion of the portfolio. This actually is very settlement is very popular with, for example, collateral sale, regardless whether it's a voluntary or any asset sale. People repay a lot and you give them some forgiveness. I know that settlement in some cases, like in the years of 2010, 2013, I had really big discussions that settlement is not a good tool, because then everybody will use it, and it's not true. Settlement is as good a tool as any other. There is only a small percentage of clients who will actually take it, and and one of the arguments I usually have is, if the clients want to go through all the pain of being called every day, being field visited, being bothered all the time, being in the credit bureau, etc., just to get the settlement, then I think they earn it. Yeah. In collateral sale, here this is a very complex process. I think one of the things that I've seen not working is control of the client. There's a lot of, like, right now, I think everybody has this like cooperation with real estate agencies. You get a signature of the of your debtor. You kind of throw it over to real estate agencies, and they take care of the property and the sales. What I didn't see too much is takeovers of properties. It used to, like during the good times, it used to be unthinkable, but there were attempts to create a real estate agency that actually has these collaterals on the books, grow the value, and then sell it. Restart loan and debt sale. I'm going to go to debt sale directly. For me, debt sale, there are two kinds: the bulk one and the individual one. Usually, if we're talking credit counseling, usually what you see is that many clients come up with some kind of related person who is willing and able to get the loan for them. So in that regard, they usually ask for repayment, and sometimes you even you have to combine it with settlement. But as long as it makes sense in terms of net present value, if your other option is to go to legal, then you have to evict and doing all of the other things, go after liquid assets and so on. It usually costs you anywhere from 40 to 60% of those recoveries. Settlement and debt sale together makes a lot of sense on individual basis. Then if you look at the pre-legal negotiations, this is mostly, I consider it a placeholder. I would call it like negotiations at any escalation point. So anytime you're changing the beat, that means you're calling, then you have a personal assignment. Before the personal assignment, it's good to have an escalation point where you're making sure that the client understands that something is changing. Usually it's a reaction point. You get some recoveries from that as well. Now, we've talked about the tool set, but what needs to be said is that when I was doing projects, mostly in what I call more hit countries, when we spoke about Ukraine, we spoke about Hungary, when we spoke about Romania, and so on, then when I worked there, it seemed to me that solutions will be the same everywhere. And restructuring was the most used tool. Voluntary asset sale, not so popular, but okay. And PTP and repayment plans almost non-existent. And if you look at it, then you have, like on the graph, you have Bank B and Bank A. Those are two different banks in two different countries. If you look at Bank A, I actually been to this bank as one of the last projects I did in 2013, 2014, maybe later a bit. And it was really funny because I came in, I expected the distribution that you see in Bank B, right? The Bank B is where the clients are really in trouble. And then when I saw Bank A, it was in one of the countries that I said before, Czech Republic, Slovakia, or Poland. And you could see that the distribution of solutions have dramatically changed. And any kind of heavy investment into restructuring and field visits and all of those cases didn't make any sense. What I want to say here is that, okay, you have a tool set, but it's anytime you're considering a new treatment to be introduced, I would strongly suggest to test it even in Excel. Nobody likes Excel, but instead of if I was in that bank, in the red bank, Bank A, and I would heavily invest into restructuring solution in terms of core system development and collection system development, and restructuring requires a parallel workflow, so it's a very complex thing. If you have all of that investment and then you realize it's only 21% of your cases, not so great. Well, good thing is that with Bank A, we did it in some access tool, just on the side, realized that this is the case, and actually focused a little bit more on RPCs and other things. So from this perspective, the message here is, not all the portfolios are created equal. Now, one more poll will be here. The question here is whether you use randomized trials, champion challengers, by the words. Yeah? And regardless whether it's another poll, and regardless whether it's because, yes, I have the system, or no, I don't have the system, or no, I didn't even think about it. For me, the question is whether anytime you wake up in the morning and you say, well, I want to test this, that you have the ability to do it with ease. So I think this will be an easy poll. So I'm going to give it a 1 minute, and we can jump from there. Okay, 10 more seconds. I don't see anything coming back. So I think we can close it. All right. So it's kind of equal. I'll be honest, I expected worse. I expected worse. I expected partially a no to be the majority. So I'm glad to see it. I am a freak in terms of randomized trials. I love it. If you like, I think that there's no better way to test your hypotheses than doing this. It's not easy in the physical world. It's easy in the digital world, but I'm glad that I see that these randomized trials they're coming up, and that it became a part of everyday life. So I'm happy to see that. I'll be moving on. Just give me a sec. Sharing the results. And last but not least, I want to share with you, in order to control the processing of moratoria cases, you don't need too many reports. I understand that, I think the notion is the more reports, the better. I'm actually, in the last several years, I was trying to test how, what is the fewer number of reports I can use in order, but to control the processes properly in the, let's say, environments of pilots. And I realized I came up with 4. These 4 have different dimensions and slices and dices, but and I use the waterfall report. I use the treatment popularity, the process status, and productivity reports. And then the reason why in the next 2 slides, I'm going to tell you why, right? So waterfall reports, to me, this tells me how the process works and what is my efficiency inside of the process. You can see that on the slide right now on the right side, you actually have two views of the waterfall. On the left side, it is either stock or batch. It's up to you. And you can see the assigned cases down to solution, right? And the thing is that the bigger jumps, right now, these are not rates on the top, but the bigger jumps mean that I have a problem. I have a problem in the process. Something's not working and I need to fix it. And the same view or similar view is on the bottom, but you can see the rates. This is basically measuring the jumps between the different columns. Here, what I want to say is that with many treatments to be as the solution, there's no easy, it needs to be aggregated. You have a solution, you don't have a PTP, you don't have a restructuring, you don't have voluntary sale, you have to aggregate it. And therefore you're kind of losing some of the information here. So that's why I wanted to look at the treatment reports, which you see right now on the left. This is actually bank A or B. When we were looking at on slide number 17, which you see, I present bank A and bank B. And bank A is the better, let's say, better off country, which was not hard hit. You can see PTP, repayment, and so on. So from this particular case, I was looking at weekly reports after 4 weeks of pilot. and what were the final solutions. And you could see that, you know, I have the distribution there. So I know that most popular and most effective is PTP at the moment, repayment plan, restructuring, voluntary asset sale, and any asset sale. And for me, this is important. Just if I want to manage the treatment kit, I can actually restrict, you know, the treatments there, so that the process doesn't take so long. Or if it changes, you know, I can boost up the restructuring in time. Then the middle is ugly, but very for me very effective. This is if you have a certain process, you wanna, if you're processing, for example, restructuring cases for moratoria, then you want to see where the cases are getting stuck. You can do it on an individual basis. You can have all the collectors there, or you can have it aggregated, which I did for this purpose. And again, this is like a different pilot that we did before. And, you know, I've seen after 2 weeks that field visits are being planned, but not executed. And this was a good, you know, for me, this was a good information where, you know, you can basically say, hey, there is a bottleneck right here, and let's give it a, you know, let's try to solve it. And solution here was that people were planning field visits in batches. So usually it was the first, you know, 1 week was calls, the next week was for field visits, the third week was for solutions. And it was like this life cycle of field visitors there. And then last but not least, it's productivity numbers. It's weekly, monthly, daily, doesn't matter. Here again, since you have field visit, meetings, calls, everything together, you have to put it, you know, put it in one column. You can divide it though, and just to make sure that people are productive, yeah, that they are not losing the productivity in time. So from this perspective, there are only 3 columns. One is activities, the other one is contacts, regardless whether through personal meet or a call, and then positive solutions. And positive solution means that the clients agreed to either PTP, restructuring, and so on and so forth. And this is these are the activities that are going forward to solution. Now, why I'm telling you all this, whether like it sounds complicated, it needs management, but it's worth it. The reason it's worth it is that when we did the pilots, so, you know, you can see on the left side, you have 46% improvement in compound flow rates. And we did this division between call center and field visitors. We had randomly picked for 5 field visitors, and for a period of 6 months, we had them working on the same cases and control those, you know, inflows, etc., right? And the difference was amazing. It was, I think, the compound flow rate was in the call center, it was near to 50%. In the field visitors was around 26-27%. So the lower flow rates were amazing. So it makes sense, a lot of sense. Here in the left side, we were talking close to yearly improvement in loan loss provisions, close to 7 to 8 million euros. Yeah. On risk cost saving on the right side, this was actually 11%, but these guys were already in a pretty good shape. And I was really surprised that we were able to do this. This was the better country, let's say. I was one of the Czech, Slovaks, or Polish. And even if we were really not into these restructurings and so on, solving the problem the first time there with the field visitor or the credit counselor on the phone, this was actually a phone related, resulted in direct 11% risk costs. So we were talking millions of euros here, and annually, sorry. And so from this perspective, you know, I was pretty surprised how well this works, because I was like, my bread and butter was call centers, right? So I was convinced, like, call center guy, and some of my friends are now very convinced field visit guys that, you know, they don't want to talk about call centers anymore. I don't know why, but reason, like, each of those have its place. I believe for these moratorium cases, which will be probably defaulting, uh, these, let's say, solutions that are set up for effectiveness are much better than efficiency through call center. Now, I am at the end of my speech. So to conclude it, what I wanted to say and share with you today is that moratoria are not a friend. They actually create problems more than they solve. And even today, we see that solvent clients don't take moratorium. So even today, I would expect, and this is a guess. Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's my guess is, when I see the distribution of moratorium cases, 64% of all of them are cash loans, then you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see 30 to 40% default directly from these cases. But hopefully not. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe maybe there is some kind of magic. The second message I want you to take away: the fact that the clients are inside of the moratorium doesn't mean you can't work with them. I actually lived through this in Hungary, where there was a lot of restrictions on what the banks could do to the clients or work with the clients. Yes, it takes, you need to switch from being collectors to being sellers. This is the biggest problem, like the biggest change that has to happen. But it means that if you work with those cases that are under moratorium, you start booking the loan loss provisions gradually, and you will dissipate the problems with capacities in time. So there will be no, 3,000 cases just with your normal inflow all of a sudden 1 month at plus 3,000. This is just not going to happen if you work with them. If my or if the idea is wrong, right? If these moratorium cases are actually great clients who will, jump up and pay like nothing really happened, then if nothing else, you will improve your regular outcomes. You will actually improve your risk costs in the long run, which will then reflect in PD/LGD rates once you recompute your IRB models. So if nothing else, it still have a very positive outcome. And last one, as a freak to pilots, I wanted to say, once the pilots are running and they have good outcomes, don't stop them. If it's in Excel, struggle with the Excel for next 3 months until the real solution is there, but don't stop it. You will lose a lot of know-how, a lot of momentum. So once you start working, keep on working. So for me, I think that's the end of the story that I wanted to share, and would like to talk to you and in person if you have any questions. I will let Mihaela handle.
Yep. Thank you very much, Tomasz, for the delivery, for the speech, for the experience sharing. I believe that it was super useful for everyone here. Now I will give you the moment to share with us the question that you have. We have so far one question which got popped in, but please do use this time of introduction while I will to prepare the questions, or like to send us the questions. So you can send the question through the Q&A button that you should have in your menu. Yeah? So we will answer them one by one. we have now this dedicated session. It will be 15 minutes. So starting now, it will be 15 minutes. So, so feel free. Yeah. While you are writing, I will send you the first questions. I'll send you the, I will address to Tomasz the first question that we have received. So it goes, do we have to choose whom we give the moratoria, or do we give it just to everyone? Like, is there any selection or segmentation?
Okay, so I think there is two things. One question is whether we give moratorium to everyone, and that answer is yes, because that's given by law, right? You can't just choose certain certain cases for moratorium, and then give it to a certain cases. This is just not how these, let's say, statewide moratoria should work. And then if the question would be, do we need to select whom to target from the moratoria cases, then I would say yes, because you will have a range. You will have a range of clients in there. You will have those who ask for moratorium, and for some strange reason they will be paying. Yeah. So you can tell them, hey guys, I see that you're still paying, or you get the transactions on your current account. Let's work with this, because you will be in some time you will be not in a good position to start paying with this. So yes, if we're talking about this, then if you look at transactions on the account, past behavior, and similarity-based models, where when you look at the past behaviors, then you can most definitely, or you have to definitely start working with certain segments. It's not a blank slate.
Okay, thanks, Tomasz. I hope that we answered the question. If not, get back to us. The other question that we got is, IBA treatment of COVID moratorium, stage 2 or staying in stage 1?
Actually staying in stage 1, because they're saying if it's state enacted, or if it's industry standard. So by other words, I don't know, the banking association said, this is our guideline, or if the national bank said, this is our guideline, then even EBA guideline to, like this addendum, if you will, says, do not reclassify. It's not a trigger. It's not a trigger, end of the story. So it has to have certain elements, right? So you can't just pick and choose who to give it to. It needs to be within certain time period. It needs to be like automatic. You shouldn't be like assessing. It shouldn't be like client gives an application, we do underwriting, and then deciding whether to give or not to give. It should be like blank slate. You want moratorium, here you have it. It's 3 months or 6 months, see you later, right? For this, there is no request or requirement to reclassify, and even to stage 1 or stage 2. I mean, to any stages. Yeah. So it stays in the stage 1. However, they are saying with the same in the same sentence, they're saying, stay prudent. And to me it means like, okay, so what it's like oxymoron, right? So don't reclassify, but stay prudent. And to me it means that if your internal early warning signals or models tell you that this client is in the worst, or let's say in the rating, not the worst, the worst is usually default, but it's in troubles and asking for this, I would say it could be, but in reality, I would just take the blank slate and say, hey guys, do not reclassify, and take the time to work with these clients rather than waiting. So was that? I hope that was a good answer.
Okay.
Sufficient.
Thank you. Let's proceed to the next question. What is provisioning practice for restructuring, particularly in crisis like we have now?
Good question. Well, it's different everywhere, but when you do really restructuring, it's so, by other words, if you go to let's say moratorium cases is not restructuring. It's by definition you don't have to reclassify. I am of a different opinion though, because if somebody asks you for help, it should be a trigger. But okay, we're in some, let's say, crisis mode. But in any case, so what is restructuring? Restructuring for me is that you go back to the moratorium cases and you start like telling them, hey, you need to do this. And then yes, forbearance applies 100%. Like there's no question. And so this is like the practice is that then you recognize it, that you actually reclassify the client. You need to hold it for the next 12 months and create loan loss provisions for that, and so on and so forth. For me, this is a lower risk or lesser problem than seeing half of the portfolio in this moratorium just going straight to default. You can actually you can use the moratorium or use this to book the provisions gradually. And this, it has been used this way, post 2008. So let's be honest with ourselves that these 6 months to 12 months moratoriums were just to postpone the booking. It wasn't to solve the problem. But right now, yes, I would do it, and I would do it gradually.
Thank you, Tomasz. Another question. What if customers request for moratorium twice? Should they be classified or not?
Yes, there should be 100%. Like there would be, like if they ask for one and then they ask for another, it should be like immediately. In my opinion, it should be bye-bye. It should be like it's the highest level. For me, this is the highest level of like that they are not so ready to pay. These guys should be like top priority. If they ask for it again, I would make them actually a priority for restructuring and all the other, let's say, tools for, if it's not some kind of small, and I don't know, overdraft or something. Yeah? So then we're talking not such a huge amounts, but if we're talking some bigger cash loans, mortgages, combinations of that, then making those a priority, would make sense. But the answer is double, triple moratorium means a bad sign, and they should be reclassified.
Thank you, Tomasz. While we wait for other questions, if there are, of course, I would like to mention two details. One of the messages that this session, as mentioned at the beginning, is recorded. So we will share it with you, the recording within these days. Also, in case that there is any question that you have, for reasons you had to leave or you don't want to ask it now, feel free to write to Tomasz or to me, and we will gladly answer to any of questions that might arise after the webinar. Yeah, after 1-2 days, when you think about it or you meet something in your institution, in your bank, that you are facing, I don't know, some questions, just really feel free to answer us. We would gladly do that. And one more thing, I would like to ask you. We have one last poll that we would like to do, and this poll is about some other webinars, because we believe that there might be some more topics which you would be interested in, but we would like to really give it to you, or like to answer to your actual needs. So I'll give it back to Tomasz.
Why I'm asking this at the end, or we're asking this at the end, because some of you might be completely disappointed in the level of detail we have here. Some of you, like if there is somebody who never seen restructuring before and you know, doesn't know capitalization of interest, you know, and what kind of issues that brings and so on, then you know, it's kind of hard to create the right balance. At the same moment, I understand that there are topics in this material that would just like that beg for more detail, right? And in that regard, I would create something more detailed, that, you know, the nitty gritty of, you know, how to book it, how to prepare it, you know, and so, for example, I see that restructuring, reporting, KPI, incentive schemes, we can most definitely look at those different aspects, how it worked in some cases, what didn't work actually in some cases, what backfired, and share that. Hopefully we can have some discussion. This is my first webinar, and it's kind of weird that I can't hear anybody, but hopefully you can give me some feedback, make it better next time. We'll wait for another, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, and then we'll end the poll.
Okay, thank you everyone to those who answered. I still see that answers are coming. We will end now the poll, and actually we'll not share the results. Let's keep it as a surprise, and you will keep watching us, you know, for the further events or messages from our side. Yeah. So thank you everyone who answered. Those who still want to answer, but I will already close the poll, please return to us with the message. Yeah, so we will answer to that anytime. Good. I will look one more time if there is any question, and I will give 1 more minute in case that somebody is now typing any questions to send it out to us. If not, then we are approaching our 3:15, 1 hour and 15 minutes as we promised from your time. So 30 more seconds for the last most important question, maybe, or the most challenging question.
There's nothing coming.
Yeah. Okay, then as we mentioned previously, if there is any other question that you would like to approach us, to ask us, or to us to answer, just feel free to email us. We would like to say thank you to everyone who participated, even though, yeah, as Tomasz said, this time on mute. Maybe next time we can organize more of a workshop so that we can have you involved as well, as to share your experience and your ideas. But up until then, stay tuned, follow us on LinkedIn, and we will return with some hopefully good news soon.
Thank you for participating, and I have one request from all of you guys who know me, and, you know, we've been interacting in the last couple of days regarding this webinar. If you can shoot me an email on, like, I understand you're busy, right? So it's not a request that mandatory, but if you would give me a couple of bullet points, whether you would what you would appreciate better, more, and so on, so we can make it better next time. And I would really appreciate it. And I really appreciate also the fact that you came in and were part of this and asked questions. Cool.
Yep. Thank you very much. And just probably one last one thing. Wait from us within these days one email where we will share the link to this webinar, and as well we'll share with you the results of the polls. Yeah. And because we believe that it might be useful, interesting to you to see country-wise how the situation is. So do expect some emails from us. Share this webinar with whomever you find that it will be useful, and see you or hear you around the globe.
Perfect.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.